Hi guys, I hope you're all doing well, and just without further ado, I'm just going to dive into what I need to discuss for this discussion post about transitioning to post-secondary environments. So the first point that I need to address is discussing one highlight for each of the four parts that were discussed in the article Coming of Age series on the Interactive Autism Network website. So the first part was autism and the transition to adulthood. And the main concept that they were trying to address in this part was how the transition from one system to another, is completely different. They're not two equal systems. They are systems that have different funding, and they are systems that have different laws and a set of rules that just govern them. And so that creates, a challenge and an obstacle for students with autism to settle in and to have a smooth transition. And that's why it was kind of foreshadowing what they will discuss later on, the importance of teaching early on the daily life skills, or as they like to say, the adaptive skills within their IEPs if they have them. The second part discussed about adaptive skills and how it's a key for independence. And the primary focus for this part was discussing about how sometimes parents and teachers, we think that teaching academic and behavioral skills are much more important than the daily life skills or the adaptive skills. And we think of them as less important, less beneficial, and we think that a person with average intelligence will ultimately learn those skills on their own. And that has proven to be false. And so that's why it is important to teach those skills in an explicit manner, and to follow through with patience on how to teach them. They gave an example of how practicing these skills need not only to be done within the school or at home, but in the actual environments that these scenarios are taking place. Like, for example, if you're going to a restaurant to order from a menu, then go to a restaurant and order a menu. If you want to teach your child with autism how to do shopping, then go to the mall, go into a store, and explicitly explain to them how to shop. So the third part was about college and the autism experience. And I think that experience, no matter where you are, if students with a disability or without a disability, I think it's a big transition. But I think primarily for students with ASD, I think it's an abrupt and a dramatic one. And that's because, as I learned from the article, the IEP disappears and parents can no longer advocate for their children. And one of the primary things in college is that they start focusing a lot on preventing discrimination, and so that could cause an issue there. One other component that they addressed was in the transition to college life. It's not necessarily about the academics that the student is learning that's difficult, but it's a matter of the social aspect of transitioning to college life. There's this one quote, I'm just going to read it off directly from the website. It said, "If you send a person to college with a hearing impairment, you provide an interpreter of the hearing world. But our people on the spectrum need an interpreter of the social world." And so that's a component that I think could be underestimated in the transition. Another component that this part emphasized was the concept of self-advocacy. We know that self-advocacy, I think, becomes a major component in college life. Parents, we know that my mom, my dad are no longer here to advocate for me if I have a problem, or if I'm facing a problem, let's say with a peer or a professor. I have to do that all on my own. And so that becomes an issue because, one, the students with ASD either don't know how to do it, or they don't want to do it because they just want to feel like they want to fit in. And finally, the fourth part addressed finding a college program. The main part that it was saying is that there's always a college program whether it's a 2-year or a 4-year program for students with ASD. But the issue is that you have to look for it. Like you have to get on a scavenger hunt to find it. All the institutions that accept federal money must provide, reasonable adaptations or accommodations. However, I think these accommodations vary in level and in support for the students with ASD. Some accommodations include, extended time on tests, taking tests in a room that's free of, distractions or things or stimuli, or maybe using the use of a note taker or a recorder, or to take class notes. It just depends. The thing is, universities and colleges do not have to provide individual tutoring, and sometimes additional help could be found by maybe resources and services that need funding, and so that's why if you have extra money, you could find that support. The other component that I had to address in today's discussion post was about how can we as teachers, potentially for me as a elementary school teacher, how can we help plan for that transition for post-secondary environments? I think one thing that was really stood out from this article was the importance of teaching daily living skills, like those adaptive skills, teaching them early on. Not just teaching them when they're middle high schools, but teaching them on when they're in elementary school. Parents, give them chores to do, let them take responsibility. That's where it really big starts off from. I think if we transition more into teaching, that could be done in classroom jobs. If students have classroom jobs, that's where it could be implemented. I think furthermore, sometimes in an IEP meeting, maybe parents and teachers might focus a lot on the academics and the behavioral goal setting, but I think it's important that we as teachers advocate for adaptive life skill setting. And I think that would, for the long run, help these students build successful post-secondary lifestyle. One article that I found from the Smart Brief, from my Smart Brief subscription, was about the number of students that receive teens that with ASD receiving a driver's license by the age of 21. It was describing about how students generally within 10 to 24 months, between 12 to 24 months of them receiving their learner's permit, they get their driver's license. And for normal functioning students, that is usually between 94% to 98%. However, students with ASD, that score for them is between, just to look at the specific results, it was between 82% and 90%. That's actually not a big difference. That's not a big difference, and I think this driving is a adaptive skill, especially if the students with autism have no a severe intellectual disability. I think driving is a basic skill, especially living here in the United States, where you really need transportation, effective means of transportation, because everything's so far apart. And so I guess this is my discussion post for this week. If you guys have any questions or you want any further clarifications, feel free to message me, to make a post, and I'll get back to you. And I'll definitely post the link to my article below. Thank you.